Do you have negative feelings towards the opposite sex? If so, you're not alone, and this video is for you. We enjoy tackling relevant topics every week, so take a quick moment to support our efforts and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for notifications. Thanks so much for tuning in to LilyTube.
This video is sponsored by Canyon Foot and Ankle. From simple nail care to advanced trauma and reconstructive care, their podiatrists have the training and skills needed to resolve even the most complex cases. Treat your feet to the exceptional care they deserve. Now, many of us entered into our marriages when we were in our 20s, and over the years found ourselves more and more disillusioned with the people we married, and sometimes with the entire institution of marriage. I know divorced people who say they're never going to try again. Similarly, we have seen many people who simply ascribe all of their former partner's worst qualities, and of course the pain they helped to cause, to every one of the opposite sex.
You know, Jeff, I hate to admit this, but when I was in my early 20s, maybe even late teens, I started kind of hating men. And I did manage to get myself married during that time, and it wasn't good for my marriage. And I ended up having all boys later on. And gratefully, I did some personal work, and I realized that it was cognitive distortions on my part based on life experience. And I'm glad that I shifted that, because when I found out I was having a boy, which was revelation to me. I mean, I know there was a 50-50 chance, but in my mind, there was no chance because I came from all girls and 6 generations of firstborn girl Catherines. So I couldn't have a boy, but I did. And I'm so grateful that I'd done that work to get over that generalized man-hating that I had experienced, because I love my boys. I wouldn't trade them for the world. And it was important for me to be in that good headspace, because it's not fair. It's not fair to every man out there that needs to be judged on their own merits.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be with you if you were hating me.
Well, I didn't hate my husband. It's just when you have that generalized hatred towards the opposite sex, it interferes with other relationships.
Not to mention being very unattractive.
Yeah, it probably was not very attractive quality. You know, this kind of generalized man or woman hating, it's a natural response to trauma. Our brains want to warn us of anything we think might be dangerous, and our brain works overtime to do it. So if you've had a bad experience with perhaps a big dog like a German Shepherd, you might refuse to have anything to do at all with German Shepherds in the future, and maybe you'll even be afraid of all dogs in general. Similarly, if you are traumatized by a man or a woman of the opposite sex, your brain may warn you to be leery of all members of the opposite sex, just to be on the safe side. Only that isn't safe and it isn't fair. All it will do is keep you single, and probably unhappy because of how you're feeling about half of the world's population.
Are you cynical and maybe prone to think the worst about divorced members of the opposite sex? Do you jump to the conclusion that your dating partners or prospective dating partners were abusive in their prior marriages and that's why they're divorced? Are you prone to making disparaging, generalized statements about men or women?
The most important first step to cleaning up your thinking is to know that it needs cleaning up. The second is to intentionally recognize that the opposite sex is made up of people who are just people. There are good people, there are not so good people. There are people who make good decisions and there are people who make poor decisions. And all of us do a little bit of both. There are happy people, there are sad people. There are people with mental health issues. There are people of all kinds in both sexes. Generalizations are not going to help you much to determine if the person sitting in front of you might be a good fit for you.
Okay, so unlike my lovely wife, I've never really been a woman hater. In fact, I've generally loved women. Having said that, you know, it reminds me of a situation in our Love in Later Years group on Facebook, where there was a particular person that literally every remark that she made was about how there aren't good male priesthood holders now. There aren't good men out there anymore. You know, where have all the real men gone? And virtually everything was complaining about how men aren't stepping up and men aren't strong anymore, and, you know, going on about how they're not doing their duty. And their duty amounted, I think in her case, to asking her out on a date. In any case, I actually offered her a coaching session and she took me up on it. And we were able to talk through some of these issues and help to clean up her thinking, like, well, why do you suppose a man would be reluctant to ask a woman out? And, you know, she came up with, well, maybe he's afraid. Right. Maybe he's afraid. Maybe it's not that he doesn't want to do his duty. Maybe he's just afraid to. Maybe he's afraid of what? Rejection? And maybe he's been rejected in the past. So we talked through a lot of things. Now, the idea is, isn't this a more kind or compassionate story that you could tell about men to think, maybe this is a guy who's had bad luck in the past with women and with rejection, and he's scared to ask a girl out, even if she's great. He doesn't know that yet, and he's worried about getting hurt again. Isn't that a more compassionate story than, you know, we just need real men to step up and do their duty and be what we need them to be? And it was astounding. After that one session, her demeanor online completely changed. I mean, I'll let Cathy pick up on that.
Well, and what was interesting is that our Love in Later Years group is so positive in general that she actually kind of stood out with that little bit of negativity. And once you had that session, she started being a lot more fair and a lot more positive and even-minded, I think, in her comments. And I was really impressed by your coaching skills. I also was really happy for her to have found peace and to have found a different perspective that is more supportive to her own peace of mind and her own thinking, as well as to her interactions with everyone. And how cool is it that we can make that kind of shift actually relatively quickly when we choose to be open to a change?
And again, one of those thoughts that we can clean up is, instead of, you know, men are bad and abusive and they're narcissists, or women are only after your money, or, you know, whatever stereotypes we may adopt, to realize that men and women are just people. And we've talked about this earlier in the video, but it's worth reiterating that they're just people like you are. And there are some that you will get along with and some that you won't. But what's important is to recognize that we don't want to stereotype people, do we? We don't want to make assumptions. In our society, one of the things we feel most negatively about is if you stereotype someone or make assumptions about them based on their race. And really, we should have the same approach to stereotyping people based on gender. The fact that your ex-husband was an abusive narcissist who watched lots of porn doesn't mean that that's true of every man on earth. Just because your former wife spent all the money you made and seemed to only care about you when your bank balance was high doesn't mean that every woman is a gold digger that's just looking for somebody to feed off of.
And if we start treating our potential dating partners that way from the beginning, we're really putting a damper on the possibility of progressing in that relationship.
Absolutely, because our brain begins looking for evidence that the dating partner has these negative characteristics we're expecting.
You know, I've loved this discussion, and I hope that it will encourage everyone to just be more aware of how we are showing up in regards to our comments and the way we're interacting with the world in general with regards to the opposite sex. I'd like to encourage all our viewers who are on Facebook to come and join our Love in Later Years group.
And remember that any time is a great time for more love in your life. Thank you for watching.